So I'll probably take a quick break before we start the movie to basically end the stream, just to make sure that it's not continuing to record the movie while we watch it. Okay, so getting back to pyramiding. So cycling is often going to be combined with pyramiding, which is basically where you are gradually increasing a steroid dose until about the midpoint of a cycle, and then you're gradually going to decrease it. And the reason that you would want to do this is to basically reduce the possibility of withdrawal effects. Is everybody good? Everybody on Zoom good?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we've talked about cycling, we've talked about pyramiding. Now we have to talk about stacking and bridging. So stacking is basically the simultaneous use of two or more androgenic or anabolic androgenic steroids. Often what this is going to mean is that a short-acting oral steroid is often going to be combined with a long-acting injectable one. So we kind of saw this in that goofy Ben Affleck clip. He started with oral steroids, and then as things got more serious, he kind of shifted to the longer acting injectables. So that's what stacking is. We basically stack two steroids on top of each other. Bridging is basically every high dose that you take, and I think that this is also done to try to reduce withdrawal effects where possible. Every high dose that you take is immediately bridged. So basically between two high doses, you have a low dose. So it basically creates a bridge between both of those high doses. By the way, I hope you like wrestling. Or at least I hope that wrestling makes you laugh. It's going to come up a lot today. Okay. So everybody good? Okay, so here are a couple of different examples. So this particular user is utilizing a variety of different methods. One thing you'll kind of notice is the pyramiding. So notice that we kind of start with a small dose, we have a high dose for a little while, and we reduce, so we see a lot of that. We see instances of stacking where multiple steroids are basically taken in unison. We do have some instances of bridging. So here we kind of have this oxymethylone, and then we have trenbolone in a very high dose. Then we have kind of, as that is trending downward, we basically bring back in that oxymethylone to bridge it. You can kind of see that bridge cycle there. We have a lot of stacking, a lot of pyramiding, and in general, you can kind of see that for the most part, you're not really wanting to take this more than 12 weeks. This person is getting really close to almost taking it for 20 weeks, which probably means they should quit, and thankfully they do. But they supplement it and fill in those times with other types of steroids in the process. Now, in addition to different stacking and cycling and pyramiding and bridging methods, other drugs can be taken in conjunction with anabolic steroids, and this is what's known as polypharmacy. So this is when, for example, you are taking substances to either augment the effects of anabolic androgenic steroids, you're potentially masking their presence, or you're trying to minimize side effects. So for example, you could be taking a very high dose of a diuretic. A diuretic basically makes you urinate more. High doses of a diuretic might be taken to help a user pass a urine test. And the reason you'd want to take a diuretic in that instance is because it dilutes the concentration of the banned steroids and thus cannot be detected. We are also going to watch a lot of politicians talk about steroid use in baseball, and you're going to see a lot of familiar faces. No, I meant politicians. But no, we're not talking about Charlie Hustle. Pete Rose did not get in trouble for steroids. Pete Rose got in trouble for gambling. No, it's Barry Bonds, and I can't stand Barry Bonds. Like, and every defense that he has for using steroids, like, I'm gonna kind of spoil it. He's like, y'all have never made a mistake. I'm like, yeah, I don't cheat. And I realize I'm being a little hard-lined on the cheating, like, but no, I've never done anything like that. I've never done anything to potentially give me an unfair advantage or anything like that. So hush up, Barry Bonds. But yeah.
Because they still like Barry Bonds is like they're still like, oh yeah, and then like they still like hate on Pete Rose, and I'm like, Pete Rose didn't cheat.
Pete Rose gambled though.
Yeah, but like
we're talking about baseball, people. I don't actually know that much about baseball, but you're going to see people like Jose Canseco, Mark McGuire, stuff like that. Okay, does anybody need some more time here? Okay. You don't need to write this down. This is based on data from the World Anti-Doping Agency from 2013. So here's what was typically found in athlete systems that were basically in trouble. 63% were anabolic agents, 10% were stimulants such as pseudoephedrine. Those could potentially help you be more stimulated, send more blood flow to your muscles to help you run faster. Diuretics and other masking agents, that's about 8%. Glucocorticosteroids, that could be something like a cortisone injection or things like that. Peptide hormones, growth factors, cannabinoids, and then other adverse or atypical findings. But by and large, the majority are steroids. Blood doping? Yeah, we're going to talk about blood doping. We're going to talk about Floyd Landis. Yeah. Like, this documentary doesn't just talk about anabolic steroids. It talks about a lot of other things, and it talks about the supplement industry, and I think that's really interesting. Okay, so let's talk about the pharmacology of steroids. Okay, so what are some of the different effects of anabolic steroids? So remember that anabolic steroids have a testosterone-based core. So basically and usually these are going to be used in young men. So we're basically adding testosterone to testosterone. So here's what we find. High doses of testosterone in healthy young men leads to increased size, which is what's referred to as muscle fiber hypertrophy, increased muscle mass, and increased strength. In one particular study that looked at these aspects as well as sexual functioning, that was unchanged over the period of testing.
Dr. Gilchrist,
Yeah.
for women, wouldn't it affect the sexual, like their sexual reproduction eggs or something, since it's injecting them with testosterone?
It can. And I can kind of hear it going a little bit. So one of the things, and this is true with men as well. So we're talking about sexual function. So we're talking about sort of things like the ability to have an ejaculation, the ability to be erect. So that is not going to change. But one of the things that we do know is that the testicles do shrink, and that means a reduced sperm production. So even though sexual function hasn't really changed, there's not a decrease in interest in sex or an increase in interest in sex, but it does actually change sperm count and motility temporarily. That can also happen for women as well with respect to ovarian function. So that's a really good question.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. One reason I like having a mask, I can say all of those things that I just said and not make an embarrassed face, even though I'm feeling it. Okay, so here are some examples of this. You don't need to write these down. So here you can kind of see testosterone dose milligrams per week. And you can kind of see that with an increase in testosterone dose, we get an increase in leg press strength. We get a change in thigh muscle volume. Here, quadriceps muscle volume, which is a little bit different from thigh muscle. And then we have change in sexual function score. You can see that depending on the dose, there's not really much of an effect. We're kind of hovering around this 0 line. So anabolic steroids act like androgens, and testosterone is an androgen. So anabolic androgenic steroids all have androgenic action. They are agonists that are present at androgen receptors present in many tissues, including muscle. So here's something kind of important when we talk about androgens. They're hormones. So these are not neurotransmitters, they're hormones. Hormones basically kind of work like neurotransmitters for the entire body. So they pass through the bloodstream, and organs have receptors in these cases. So these are going to be present in many tissues, including in the muscle. And generally, one of the things that you need to know about hormone receptors, they tend to be located inside of cells. So this is really different from when we talked about neurotransmitter receptors that are often at the surface of the cell. This is actually inside of the cell in the cytoplasm. So while you were writing this down, if you've seen me putting a lot of lotion on my hands lately, I have hand eczema, but I think we figured out the problem. I think my pop socket was doing it. So I got rid of my pop socket and my hand cleared up. I don't pretend to understand why. All right. Does anybody need some more time here? Okay. So here's what this kind of looks like. So this is a cell that is located in different types of tissues. So how do anabolic steroids actually help muscles to grow? And I'm not going to get into a lot of detail with this because while I am probably more biologically inclined than your average psychologist, I don't know much about transcription factors. So I'm going to keep it really brief. So here we have an androgen. The molecules of the androgens are going to diffuse across the cell membrane, and they're going to bind to these androgen receptors that are intracellular. The receptor is then going to move to the nucleus. As you see here, it looks like a little cake with a blueberry on top. And this is basically going to regulate transcription of specific genes. So it's going to modify genetic expression to enhance overall muscle protein synthesis. So it's going to help you build muscle faster and better. Like, I like my muscles just fine, thank you. Now, I did a workout yesterday for my arms, and it was like, you do 2 to 5 sets. And for each set, you have to do 5 rounds of 5 push-ups very slowly, and then 3 pull-ups. Well, I don't have a pull-up bar, so I had to do an overhead press. But by the end of like, I'm like, that was one set. It's like 25 push-ups and 15 of these. I'm like, I hate my arms today. I'm amazed I can lift them over my head. I'm shocked. I thought I was going to be like this all day with the T-Rex arms. I mean, I loved it, but my arms did not.
I love like upper body, like pull-ups, push-ups, like that's what I strive like when we do like our fitness tests and stuff.
I got wimpy arms. I hate them.
I don't know. I've always been like upper body. Like last year at one point I was able to dumbbell bench 40 pounds.
Casey can dumbbell bench 40 pounds. I can maybe do 30, but not without a lot of work.
I mean 30's still like really good though. Like this year I haven't got past 30.
Oh wait, so is it 30 for both dumbbells or is it 15 and 15?
Oh, I hold a 40 in each hand.
That's 80. That's not 40, is it?
I just write 40 on my sheet so I know what weight to grab.
Oh no, I'm at 15.
Oh.
I'm at 15. Okay, we have established that Casey is really strong and Dr. Gilchrist is a wimpy wimp. Okay, so what are some of the other effects of steroids? So one of the other things that we know, in addition to this transcription factor, it does increase the proliferation of what are known as satellite cells, which help new muscle cells grow. And additionally, it helps promote differentiation of local stem cells, these undifferentiated cells that haven't really become anything yet. And these steroids can basically say, hey, you, become a muscle cell, please. If you go to Giant Microbes, by the way, you can actually buy a muscle cell and it stretches. I got somebody that for a graduation gift a couple of years ago because she was going into physical therapy. It's like, muscle cell can stretch. They got some really cute stuff right now too. They have like an anxiety brain and a depression brain, and they're all plush. Okay, is everybody good? Okay, so what are some of the different side effects? So here's what we know. First of all, there can be heart abnormalities. High blood pressure can result, and reduced HDL cholesterol, which is referred to as the good cholesterol. And that's actually kind of ironic when you think about it, because one of the things that you are told can reduce or can enhance your HDL cholesterol is exercising. But if you exercise with steroids, you are losing the benefits of exercise on HDL. So this does increase the risk of cardiac death. Additionally, if you are taking a ridiculous amount of steroids, that's a lot of work for your liver to do. It's part of the reason why, if you're in general, if you look at a lot of over-the-counter medications, they usually tell you if you have to take this for more than a week, talk to your doctor. And the reason that they tell you that is because taking something like that, even an over-the-counter medication, can be really bad for your liver, because your liver is constantly detoxifying and metabolizing. And by the way, I hope I don't have to tell you this, but if you go to anybody who has like a detox tea, or they tell you to do this for detoxification purposes, don't listen to them. That's what your liver is for. So that can cause toxicity in the liver. It can also cause toxicity in the kidneys. And this can cause a lot of different problems. You do not want to be without a liver. You do not want to be without a kidney. Okay, you don't need to write this down, but here are some examples. If you'd like to take a screenshot or take a picture of this, that certainly doesn't hurt, but don't write this all down. Here are a wide variety of the consequences of anabolic androgenic steroid use. So cardiovascular wise, that includes things like hypertrophy of the left ventricle, it becomes enlarged, abnormal cardiac structure and electrical activity, high blood pressure, decreased HDL, effects on the liver. Not all of the anabolic steroids do this. That'll include jaundice, which basically means you turn yellow. And let's kind of be clear, like, I am not talking about like a skin tone that has more yellow. I mean actual yellow of the eyes and the inside of the gums and things like that. Peliosis hepatis, blood-filled cysts in the liver, liver tumors, elevated serum creatine and blood urea nitrogen levels in the kidneys, impaired kidney function. Here's what happens to your skin and hair: oily skin and scalp, severe acne, male pattern baldness, and when you stop taking steroids, that doesn't go away. Like you lose your hair, it's gone. In terms of growth, it can actually stunt growth in adolescence if you take it too early. Behaviorally, it can increase the libido. It can cause mood changes such as depression and mania, increased anxiety, irritability, and aggressiveness, though not to the point of roid raging like Ben Affleck and wrecking all the stuff in your house. Like, don't wreck your stuff. That's your stuff, man. Muscle dysmorphia, so body dysmorphia, feeling like your muscles aren't large enough. Dependence. Here are the specific effects on men. Shrinking of the testicles. As I mentioned, reduced sperm count, possible infertility due to that testicular shrinkage. That can be reversed with abstinence. Enlargement of the prostate and gynecomastia. Men will actually develop breasts. Now, here's what happens with women. So we are taking a masculinizing hormone. This is what happens when men take it. It actually becomes feminizing in terms of their sexual characteristics. For women, taking a masculinizing hormone makes them look more masculine. So there will be some menstrual problems, growth of an Adam's apple, and the deepening of the voice, and that will not necessarily go away if you stop taking it. Excessive hair growth on the face, enlargement of the clitoris, and decreased breast size. So these are some different effects that can happen with steroid use. And this can lead to body dysmorphia or muscle dysmorphia. This is characterized by the perception that a person is weak or small. Body dysmorphia, by the way, y'all, is not just a thing that happens to women. This is something that happens to men, and we're actually finding that it's getting worse. Symptoms of muscle dysmorphia in men will include constant checking of bodily appearance, dieting, and excessive exercising. For men, what that's probably going to look like is attempts to bulk up rather than attempts to restrict food, probably eating more food, excessive exercising, and using steroids to enhance muscle growth. Okay, does anybody need some more time here? Okay. So let's talk about roid rage. Is it a thing? And the documentary makes really clear that roid rage is not really all that common. Now, having said that, we do know that anabolic steroids is associated with increased anxiety and irritability or aggressiveness. That is not the same thing as roid rage. And we do actually find that while roid rage is not really a thing in humans, animals, on the other hand, actually do seem to show a roid rage. Different types of animal studies have actually found evidence for increased agitation, irritability, feelings of aggression, aggressive behavior, and violence. So here, this is a case where anabolic steroids were injected into the anterior hypothalamus of a rat. And in this case, the hypothalamus is really critical for developing that fight or flight response. And the animal either received a vehicle, which is basically saline, or they got a mixture of different types of steroids. So here we have the number of attacks. Notice the difference between the vehicle and the mixture. So the rats that are getting steroids are engaging in more attacks. They're also biting more. Here we're looking at attack latency and bite latency. This means that the lower the number is, the more quickly they attack or bite. And you can see that the rats that have been given these steroids attack much more quickly, and they also bite much more quickly. Sounds like roid rage to me, but you don't necessarily see that in human beings. Thankfully, we have a conscious mind that can override those impulses. You can take it out on the boxing bag at home or at the gym. All right. I'll wait just a minute. Okay, is everybody good? Okay, so you don't need to write this down, but what you're kind of looking at here are some of the different circuitry that is kind of involved, and it might explain why steroid use can enhance these things. So here you kind of have anxiety circuitry that's made up of areas like the amygdala, the cingulate cortex, the thalamus, areas like the hippocampus. Here we have aggression, which is largely the preoptic area and the periaqueductal gray. But notice we've got some overlap here in a lot of different areas. And so one of the things that you might be surprised to know is that in addition to enhancing aggression, which we know that steroids do, they also enhance anxiety because there's a lot of overlap in these different areas. And it's a pretty complicated looking network. So when we're talking about regular steroid use, a lot of anabolic steroid users are going to deliberately design their dosage in such a way that they don't develop a tolerance. Having said that, though, some of them will become dependent. In studies involving about 426 anabolic steroid users, about a third actually met 3 or more of the diagnostic statistical manual criteria for dependence, and thus they could technically be classified as having a dependency. So that includes things like trying to quit but not necessarily being able to, feeling like they need to take these or else they will not feel better, making financial sacrifices, potentially personal sacrifices to be able to use these. Okay. So withdrawal can be unpleasant. So this will include things like fatigue, depressed mood, insomnia, restlessness, anorexia, so in this case, not really wanting to eat, decreased libido, problem with body image, and a desire for more steroids. Generally, one of the things that's actually kind of beneficial about steroids is despite the fact that this withdrawal is not very good for things like your mood, cognitively speaking, anabolic steroids don't really cause a sense of euphoria. They're not really intoxicating. And generally, people who are using them will not experience like cognitive impairments or memory impairments or anything like that. They can go about their everyday lives even during withdrawal, and this won't be too much of a problem. So it doesn't seem like it's a fun drug to take because of some of these side effects, and the withdrawal doesn't sound great. But in terms of a lot of the other drugs we've talked about, this really isn't as bad. I mean, it's still not great, but it's not as bad as like opioid withdrawal or alcohol withdrawal or things like that. And take a sip. Okay, but having said that, anabolic steroids do seem to be reinforcing. Animal research has shown that there are changes in the mesolimbic pathway. And additionally, place conditioning occurs, so animals will return to a particular area if they've received anabolic steroids in that area, and they will self-administer. Having said that, they tend to prefer other drugs to anabolic steroids. So they are reinforcing, but they're certainly not as highly reinforcing as things like opioids, alcohol, or cocaine. All right, everybody good? Okay, so here you can kind of see place conditioning with animals. So here we have active versus inactive holes. So in this case, you kind of see number of nose pokes in 4 hours to a specific area. You can kind of see that in general, for wild type mice, they actually prefer poking in an active hole. This is actually a case where androgen receptors and anabolic steroids actually aren't as reinforcing as you would expect because they actually engage in nose poking less than a standard mouse that has, oh, actually, never mind. I got this kind of messed up. This is a knockout mice, a mouse that does not have a functional androgen receptor. This is a wild type mice that's normal. And you can kind of see that androgen receptors are kind of critical for curiosity and seeking behavior. This is why they engage in less nose pokes. There we go. I had to reread the graph. I'm like, oh, got it. Okay, so anabolic steroids can be used as a form of hormone therapy. The main use that you would have for this is for hormone replacement in cases of men who have smaller gonadal organs compared to the norm. Now, this could happen for a variety of different reasons. It could happen because of testicular damage, genetic mutations, or different types of diseases that actually render the testes to what is called luteinizing hormone and follicular stimulating hormone. And if those sound familiar, it's because women are, or rather, people who are assigned females at birth and have ovaries have luteinizing hormone and follicular stimulating hormone as well. It's just that these hormones are critical for the production of sperm in males, and they're critical for the development of eggs in females. We also have what is called secondary hypogonadism, where it's not specifically a problem with the testicles itself, but rather some issues with the hormones that cause the gonads to not be operating properly. And by the way, because I know this was brought up last time, So for transitioning, for those who are transgender and are transitioning from female to male, they're basically given testosterone, which basically means they are kind of basically being given something similar to anabolic steroids. The idea behind this is that it suppresses the menstrual cycle, and it also reduces the production of estrogen from the ovaries. Yeah, I had a friend who actually took it when he transitioned. I had to be clear that it was a particular type of hormone, but he's got a pretty sweet mustache. He really does. He looks good with a mustache. Okay, so here's what this kind of looks like. You don't need to write this down, but here's what's kind of going on with normal physiology. So the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland send out luteinizing hormone and follicular stimulating hormone. That basically is sent to the testes. That leads to production of testosterone, which is sent to the sperm, and it also acts as a negative feedback loop. It actually, when testosterone is released, it basically sends an inhibitory signal back to the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland to cut production. Now, in the case of primary hypogonadism, there's a problem with the testes. So you are, the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland are sending a lot of luteinizing hormone and follicular stimulating hormone because this feedback loop is basically broken. That means that there's going to be less testosterone produced, and as a result, there's going to be a lot less sperm. With secondary hypogonadism, it's largely an issue with either the hypothalamus or the pituitary. They send out less luteinizing hormone and follicular stimulating hormone, but notice that sperm production is still present, though not to the level of normal physiology. So here's kind of some of the different things that testosterone is really critical for in different parts of the body. So it's responsible for sperm production, prostate and penis growth, erectile function. It helps maintain bone density, bone growth, and bone marrow production of red blood cells. It helps increase muscle mass and strength, and it's part of the reason why it's really hard for women to build muscle quickly. And it's why generally, if you want to look like a female bodybuilder, they're usually taking a supplement. Kidneys, this is going to produce the hormone erythropoietin, which increases red blood cell production. It helps produce hair and sebum. So sebum is oil, so it helps keep the skin oily. It also supports collagen production, and it's also responsible for aspects related to sex drive, and it aids cognition, memory, and feelings, which I find really funny because of how our culture talks about men and feelings. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I am going to basically stop share. I'm going to take a few minutes to end the live stream. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it. I'm going to view the stream on YouTube, and I'm basically going to turn it off. I don't want to hear myself talk. That is not me. Can I end it? I'm going to have to do this on my computer, so I will be right back. So I'm going to go ahead